Sophia, listen to me very carefully. It was my mother's shocking directive, coming on the very evening I had sold my company for $100 million. Tell Daniel the company is bankrupt. What are you talking about, Mom? All of a sudden? Don't ask why. Just trust me on this, just this once. Logically, it made absolutely no sense. But I could see in my mother's eyes, the eyes of the woman who had raised me my entire life, that this was no idle suggestion. I decided to trust my mother's intuition, and my own. But I didn't know it then. I didn't know that this was the last chance to save my life. Honey, the company's bankrupt. The moment I told my husband the lie, his first words froze me to the core. How much debt is there? Is the house safe? And a few days later, what transpired at my in-laws' house proved that this lie was indeed the final opportunity to save my life. How dare you act so smug when you're $5 million in debt? Why don't you go ask your mother for a loan? Hot tears streamed down my cheeks. I was furious that I had been deceived by these people for so long. But they had no idea. They had no idea that all this humiliation was the perfect trap to bring the truth to light. Hello, I'm Sophia Kim. The reason I'm telling you this story is because I believe the things I've been through might be helpful to someone else. It's a story about how dangerous something you believe to be love can be, and how great a betrayal is possible in the name of family. Until I turned 34, I thought I was living a relatively successful life. I founded a cosmetics startup right after graduating from college. It started as a small venture in my studio apartment, but I worked tirelessly for 6 years to build it. I spent late nights in the lab, weekends visiting stores to meet customers, and sometimes stayed up until dawn to handle online customer service myself. As a result, in the fall of 2023, a dreamlike event occurred. A major corporation offered to acquire my company for $100 million. The small idea that began in a studio apartment 6 years ago was now valued at $100 million. The day the deal was finalized, I returned to my penthouse in the Upper East Side of Manhattan. It was the home my husband, Daniel, and I had bought when we married 3 years ago. From the 35th floor, Central Park glittered gold in the autumn sunset. One entire wall of the living room was made of floor-to-ceiling windows, offering a panoramic view of the New York City skyline. I sat on the Italian leather sofa and unfolded the contract one more time. The signature at the end was still vivid. Sophia Kim. Seeing those two words next to the number $100 million still felt like a dream. On the coffee table sat a bottle of Dom Perignon I had bought on my way home. I had picked it up from a specialty wine shop near my office to celebrate with my husband. 2 crystal flutes were ready beside it. But strangely, instead of feeling excited, a peculiar sense of anxiety washed over me. The words my mother had said a few days ago kept echoing in my mind. My mother lives alone in a beautiful 2-story house in Westchester, New York. She's 62, but still vigorous, with an especially sharp business acumen. She had raised me on her own while successfully running a small real estate brokerage and a local bistro. She was the one who gave me the most crucial advice when I started my own business. Sophia, have you told your husband about the acquisition? We had talked 3 days earlier while having dinner at her house. She had asked while simmering her famous homemade soup. Not yet, Mom. I was going to celebrate with him tonight once the deal is completely finalized, I replied cheerfully. But then, my mother turned off the stove, and her expression suddenly grew serious as she looked at me. Sophia, listen to me very carefully. Her voice was lower and more solemn than usual. Tell Daniel the company is bankrupt. What? What are you talking about? I was so startled I put down my spoon. Why would I lie? I'm getting $100 million. Just do it. Tell him it's bankrupt and see how he reacts. There was an unusual intensity in her eyes, as if she was certain of something. Mom, what is this about? Sophia, trust me. I've been in business for over 30 years. I've learned how to read people. Let's see if Daniel truly loves you. At the time, I couldn't understand what my mother was saying. Daniel had been so caring and attentive for the past 3 years. He was tall, well-groomed, and most importantly, he always treated me with respect. But my mother's expression was so grave that her words stuck with me. I heard the front door open. Daniel was home from work. "Honey, I'm home." His voice was as soft and gentle as always. Daniel, 36, was a project manager at a reputable construction firm. He always looked dependable in his well-tailored suits. "Oh, champagne. What's the special occasion?" Daniel smiled brightly as he loosened his tie, his eyes landing on the Dom Perignon on the coffee table. Seeing that smile, I hesitated, wondering if I should really follow my mother's advice. "Honey, actually." I took a deep breath. My heart was pounding. "The company, it's bankrupt." Daniel's hand, which had been fiddling with his tie, froze. He stared at me for a few seconds, and his expression instantly hardened. "Bankrupt? What do you mean, all of a sudden?" "An investor pulled their funding, and a key partner unilaterally terminated our contract." The lies flowed out. "So, how much debt is there?" That was Daniel's first question. Not a word of comfort or encouragement. I co-signed a lot of personal guarantees. "I don't have an exact figure yet, but how much, exactly?" Daniel's voice grew urgent. "I think around $5 million. $5 million? Daniel collapsed onto the sofa. He buried his face in his hands. "Then what happens to our home? Is this apartment tied up as collateral?" That was his second question. Still not a single word of concern for my well-being. "It probably will be. I personally guaranteed the loans." Daniel started pacing back and forth in the living room, as if he were calculating something in his head. "Ugh, this is a mess. We'll have to find a rental for now." "No, we probably can't even afford rent." Watching him, I felt a coldness spread through my chest. Upon hearing that the business I had built for 6 years had collapsed, my husband's first concern wasn't for my heartbreak, but for our assets. "Honey, it's okay," I said cautiously. "We can start over." "Okay? How are we supposed to pay off a $5 million debt? Look at our age." Daniel's voice was laced with irritation. That night, I called my mother. "Mom, you were right." "I thought so. Come to Westchester tomorrow. We need to make a plan." After hanging up, I looked out the window. The moonlight danced on the distant lights of the city, but it didn't look as beautiful as it used to. From that day on, I began to play the part of the bankrupt wife. A week into my performance, Daniel started acting strangely. He, who always came home by 7 p.m. sharp, suddenly started coming home late. He also began taking frequent phone calls. Whenever his phone rang, he would go into another room and close the door to talk. "Who was that, honey?" I'd ask, and the answer was always the same. "Work stuff. A project is getting complicated." But the tone of his voice was different from usual. It sounded rushed, urgent. Then, one Saturday afternoon, Daniel suddenly announced he was going out. "Honey, I'll be back in a bit." "Where are you going?" "Oh, just meeting a friend." Normally, when he met friends, he would naturally mention who he was meeting, but that day, his answer was vague. And more importantly, his attire was strange. He, who usually dressed casually on weekends, was wearing a full suit. The moment the front door closed, I ran to the balcony. From the 35th floor, I could see Daniel pulling his car out of the underground garage. He drove off in a direction he rarely took. My mother's words echoed in my head about how she'd learned to read people. I quickly threw on a coat and left the apartment. I took the elevator down to the ground floor and hailed a cab. Luckily, Daniel's car was still stopped at a traffic light. "Driver, please follow that black sedan ahead of us." "A tail, huh? The husband?" the older taxi driver asked with a knowing smile. "Something like that, yes. You're not the first." "Don't worry, I'll make sure he doesn't spot us." The driver was a true professional, maintaining a perfect distance as he followed. Daniel drove from Manhattan towards Queens, an area we never visited. After about 40 minutes, we arrived at an old apartment complex in Queens. It was a place filled with dated 5-story buildings that looked like they were built in the 1980s. Daniel parked his car and entered one of the buildings. "Sir, I'll wait here." I got out of the taxi and cautiously approached the apartment entrance. I saw Daniel through the stairwell window, heading up to the 3rd floor. A few minutes later, a light turned on in a 3rd-floor apartment. I hid behind some bushes in the building's small garden and waited. As luck would have it, the balcony window of that apartment was slightly ajar, likely to let in the cool autumn air. About 30 minutes passed. Suddenly, I began to hear voices from beyond the window. "You need to divorce her, first thing." It was a man's voice, an older man. "Dad, it's just..." It was Daniel's voice. "What do you mean it's just? What kind of situation are we in? Why are you still clinging to a woman $5 million in debt?" "But Dad..." "Sophia." "Sophia what? What good is a Sophia with no money?" A woman's voice interjected. It was sharp and cold. "Walter is right. Daniel, you need to get a grip." It sounded like my mother-in-law. I had only met my in-laws a few times, and they had never seemed so cold. Or perhaps that was only in front of me. $5 million in debt is an amount you can never repay in a lifetime. Why should our son have to take on someone else's debt? "Mom, but what? Don't you remember what we told you when you got married? We said a woman in business was risky." Hiding behind the bushes, I felt my heart pound in my chest. I couldn't believe this was a conversation between the people I had considered family for 3 years. "But if I divorce her, what about alimony?" Daniel asked. "Alimony? What right does a debtor have to ask for alimony?" My father-in-law said with a scoff. "If anything, we should be suing her for damages, for hiding her financial status when you got married." "That's a good point." The hesitation was gone from Daniel's voice. "By the way, son," my mother-in-law suddenly asked, "you know the extent of Sophia's mother's wealth, don't you? She has a house in Westchester and a few small businesses. From what I know, a house in Westchester has to be worth at least $2 million, and her businesses are quite substantial." "Right. Before you file for divorce, have Sophia ask her mother for a loan. Tell her it's urgent." "Her mother's money?" "Yes. Get everything you can from them first, and then you file for divorce." At that moment, I felt my legs give out. I had to slump down onto the steps next to the garden. But won't Sophia get suspicious? Let her be suspicious. You're divorcing her anyway. What's there to worry about? "And Daniel, how are things going with Emily these days?" A woman's name I had never heard before. "Emily? We're in touch." "Good. After you divorce Sophia, you can get back together with Emily." "I'm not really thinking that far ahead yet." "Not thinking? Do you have any idea how many years you've been seeing Emily?" My mother-in-law's voice grew louder. "Mom, keep your voice down." "Oh, right. But Daniel..." Snap out of it. This is no time to be tied to a penniless woman. I couldn't listen anymore. I quietly got up and returned to where the taxi was waiting. "Back to Manhattan, please. How did it go?" "You look like you've had a shock," the driver said, glancing at my face in the rearview mirror with concern. Yes, it was worse than I thought. As the taxi pulled away, I stared out the window. The old apartments of Queens blurred past. It was surreal to think that a conversation that would change my entire life had just taken place there. I got home before Daniel. I waited on the couch, watching TV, trying to act normal. An hour later, Daniel returned. "Honey, you're back? You said you were meeting a friend. Who was it?" I asked casually. "Oh, a buddy from college. We just caught up on things." It was a lie. But now, I was a liar too. "Oh, really? Did you have a good time?" "Yeah, it was all right." That night, I called my mother. I told her everything I had heard at my in-laws' house. "Mom, what do I do now?" "Sophia, I've met a lot of people in my life, but I never imagined it would be this bad." I could feel the anger in my mother's voice. "Come to Westchester tomorrow. We need to change our plan." I hung up and tried to sleep, but I couldn't. I looked at Daniel, sleeping beside me. He looked so peaceful, but now I knew what kinds of thoughts were hiding behind that tranquil facade. Who was this Emily? And had Daniel been seeing her since before we were married? I had so many questions. The next day, a Sunday afternoon, I went to my mother's house in Westchester. Her home was a 2-story residence with a small, beautiful garden, built in a classic style. It was the house she had bought after achieving success in her businesses. As I opened the gate, autumn chrysanthemums were blooming beautifully in a corner of the garden. My mother was in the living room, brewing tea. Her expression was more serious than usual. "Mom, what should I do?" I asked as soon as I sat on the sofa. My mind had been a chaotic mess since last night. Sophia, sit down and have some tea first. My mother placed a warm cup of green tea in front of me. I thought a lot about this last night, and this situation is far more serious than we initially believed. In what way? This isn't just Daniel having a momentary change of heart. This seems to be a premeditated plan involving his entire family. My mother's words sent a chill down my spine. And we need to find out who this Emily woman is. It's possible she's someone Daniel was involved with even before your marriage. My mother took a business card from her handbag. It read, Jack Miller, Private Investigations. Mom, a private investigator? Yes. He helped me years ago when I was a victim of real estate fraud. He's very good. Right then and there, my mother called Jack Miller. Mr. Miller, this is Helen Kim. Something urgent has come up, and I needed to contact you. The call lasted about 10 minutes. My mother briefly explained the situation and scheduled a meeting for the next day. Let's start by tracking Daniel's movements, and let's find out who this Emily is. The following Monday, my mother and I met with Jack Miller. His office was a small but clean and professional space near Grand Central. Mr. Miller was a man in his mid-50s who seemed cautious and observant. Ma'am, could you show me a photo of your husband? I showed him a picture of Daniel on my phone. And tell me his usual commute times and routes. He usually leaves at 8 a.m. and comes home at 7 p.m. His office is in Midtown. Have there been any recent changes to his routine? Yes, his return times have become irregular, and he's been going out frequently on weekends. Mr. Miller nodded as he took notes. All right, I'll tail him for about a week. That should reveal a pattern. And can you possibly find a woman named Emily? My mother asked. Do you know her last name? We don't, but we believe she's someone Daniel has known for a long time. Understood. While tailing him, I'll be able to identify the people he meets. 3 days later, we received the first report from Mr. Miller. My mother and I went back to his office. Mrs. Kang, your husband doesn't go straight home after leaving his office at 6 p.m. Mr. Miller spread several photos on the table. He drives from Midtown to Soho and meets someone at a cafe for about an hour. The photos showed Daniel sitting across from a young woman, deep in conversation. Is this woman Emily? It's not confirmed, but it's highly probable. They meet at the same time and same place every day. The next photos showed the two of them leaving the cafe and entering a nearby boutique hotel. The moment I saw that picture, I felt like I couldn't breathe. My mind went blank, and the world around me seemed to fade away. Sophia, are you okay? My mother placed a hand on my shoulder. Yes, I'm fine. But my voice was trembling. And Mrs. Kang, there's a more serious problem, Mr. Miller said carefully. We looked into this woman. Her name is Emily Park. She's 32 and currently works in the finance department of a cosmetics company. A cosmetics company. Suddenly, I felt a connection click in my mind. Yes. But what's more surprising is that she was college classmates with your company's CFO, Rebecca Chang. In that instant, goosebumps covered my entire body. Rebecca Chang? Rebecca was one of the people I trusted and relied on the most. She had been with me since the early days of the company, a colleague who managed all our finances. Yes, I confirmed it through social media. They were in the same department at the same university. Mr. Miller showed me his phone screen. There was a photo from a college reunion with Rebecca and Emily Park standing together. Then, could it be? Yes, my mother said coldly. What you're thinking is likely correct. Internal company information may have been leaked. This wasn't just an affair. It was a calculated fraud. And ma'am, Mr. Miller continued, if you want more definitive proof, we could try to get a recording. A recording? Yes. We could plant a small recording device at the cafe where they meet. It's legally gray, but for personal use. My mother and I looked at each other. Let's do it, I said firmly. I wasn't going to be a victim anymore. 2 days later, we received the audio file from Mr. Miller. We played it on a laptop in my mother's study. At first, it was just the ambient noise of the cafe. Then, a familiar voice emerged. So Sophia really has $5 million in debt? It was Emily's voice. Yeah. You heard it from Rebecca. She checked all the company books. It was Daniel's voice. Wow. That's incredible. So you can just file for divorce now, right? Not yet. My mother wants me to get money from Sophia's mom first. Her mom's money. Is that even possible? Sophia's in a state of despair right now. She might turn to her mom for help. So how much do you think you can get? The house in Westchester alone is worth over $2 million. And she has her businesses. So, wow. Then we could get more than $3 million. Listening to the conversation, I trembled with rage. But what came next was even more shocking. By the way, honey, how many times have you done this? Done what? Married someone to take their money like this. This is the third time. Daniel's voice was full of pride. The first was a woman who owned a fried chicken joint in Queens. The second was a woman who ran a tutoring center in Scarsdale. And you succeeded with both. Of course. I got $500,000 from the first one and $800,000 from the second. That's amazing. And Sophia? Sophia's the big fish. She had a company, and her mother is rich. I couldn't listen anymore. I slammed the laptop shut. My hands were shaking so much, I couldn't even control the mouse. Sophia. My mother called my name softly. Mom, what do I do now? Now, we make our own plan. My mother's voice was cold and steady. If Daniel is a professional con artist, we have to respond in kind. That night, I went home and looked at Daniel. He was watching TV on the couch as usual, a natural smile on his face. But now I knew the calculations and schemes hidden behind that smile. I wasn't his beloved wife. I was just his third target. And Rebecca was the same. The colleague I had trusted most for 6 years had, in fact, been planning to betray me from the very beginning. In that moment, I felt something in my heart turn to ice. I couldn't just stand by and be a victim any longer. A few days after listening to the recording, my mother and I devised a detailed plan. Sophia, it's time for us to make the first move, my mother explained in the study of her Westchester home. One wall of the study was lined with antiques she had collected since she was young. Among them, a Joseon Dynasty white porcelain jar glowed under a soft spotlight. Let's invite your in-laws to our house. Here. Here? Yes. Daniel will try to ask for a loan from me, but we will make the offer first. My mother's eyes glinted sharply. We'll confirm just how greedy they are and gather more evidence. 2 days later, I cautiously made the suggestion to Daniel. Honey, I spoke to my mom, and she knows about our difficult situation and wants to help. Daniel's eyes instantly lit up. Really? Yes. But she said she'd like to meet your parents as well. How about we invite them to Westchester this weekend? That's a great idea. My parents have been wanting to meet your mother too. It was a lie, of course. But Daniel agreed without a hint of hesitation. That Saturday at 6 p.m., the dinner began at the Westchester house. My mother had prepared extensively for the occasion. She had ordered a gourmet meal from a high-end catering service and had the living room and dining area immaculately arranged. The table was set with fine china. My father-in-law, Walter Kang, was in his mid-60s, a tall and quiet man. He wore a neat gray suit, but his eyes were calculating and cold. My mother-in-law, Nancy Kang, was in her early 60s, wearing heavy makeup and a thick gold necklace. She was dressed far more extravagantly than usual. Helen, hello. Thank you so much for inviting us to this lovely home, my mother-in-law said, her eyes darting around the house as she greeted my mother. Oh, it's nothing. Of course I should host my Sophia's in-laws, my mother replied, her tone more polite and gentle than ever. The dinner lasted for about an hour. At first, everything was amicable. My in-laws praised the food, and my mother kept offering them more. Helen, the food is truly delicious, my father-in-law said with a rare smile. It's just catered. Please, have some more. But I could feel my in-laws' gazes constantly scanning the house. They paid particular attention to the antiques in the living room and the gold ring my mother was wearing. As the meal was winding down, Daniel cautiously brought up the topic. Mother, actually, there's something we need to discuss. Yes? What is it? Sophia's business has run into some trouble, and we're going to need some help for a while. My mother slowly set down her teacup. How much help do you need? About $2 million should help us stay afloat for now, my mother-in-law suddenly interjected. Helen, we are so sorry to have to ask this of you, but Sophia is having such a hard time. My mother pretended to think for a moment, then nodded. Well, if Sophia is truly in trouble, I suppose I must. 2 million is a lot of money, but yes, we are truly sorry, my father-in-law added, bowing his head, but his expression showed more anticipation than apology. But tell me, my mother said, her tone suddenly shifting. Are you sure Sophia's company is really bankrupt? The air in the living room instantly turned cold. Helen, what do you mean by that? Daniel asked, his face a mask of confusion. Well, I'm just curious. If Sophia's company really did go bankrupt, I'm wondering what you, her in-laws, plan to do. My in-laws exchanged glances. This was clearly a question they hadn't anticipated. Well, of course we would have to overcome the hardship together, my mother-in-law stammered. Really? You'd be willing to take responsibility for $5 million of debt with her? 5 million? My father-in-law's face instantly tightened. Yes. Sophia personally guaranteed $5 million. So, will you, her family, help repay it? In that moment, my mother-in-law's expression changed completely. Well, that was Sophia's business. Why should we? So you're thinking of divorce then? My mother asked casually. The room fell completely silent. The only sound was the ticking of the grandfather clock. Divorce? No, that's not, Daniel stammered. Then what is it? You want to take my money, but not the responsibility. My mother's voice grew sharper. Helen, please don't misunderstand. That's not what we meant. Then what did you mean? My mother pulled a small digital recorder from her purse and placed it on the table. Would you care to listen to this? From the recorder came the conversation between Daniel and Emily that I had heard days before. So Sophia really has $5 million in debt. Yeah. You heard it from Rebecca. My in-laws' faces turned ghostly white. Daniel, in particular, sat with his mouth agape, utterly speechless. And listen to this too. The second recording began to play the conversation from my in-laws' house. Why are you still clinging to a woman $5 million in debt? Have Sophia ask her mother for a loan. My mother-in-law abruptly stood up. We should be going now. But you haven't even had your tea. My mother said leisurely. No, something urgent just came up, my father-in-law said, scrambling to his feet. I see. So what about the money? We'll talk about that later, Daniel said, stumbling as he got up. Later when? Tomorrow? The day after? My mother pressed. But my in-laws didn't answer. They rushed toward the front door. Their hands trembled so much they could barely put on their shoes. Well, goodbye then. Please come again, my mother said, following them to the door. But they didn't even turn their heads as they hurried away. Once the door closed, I collapsed into my chair. All the strength had drained from my legs. Sophia, are you okay? My mother wrapped her arms around my shoulders. Mom, it's really over, isn't it? Yes. Now you've seen their true colors. In that moment, I felt the emotions I had built up for 6 years come crashing down. I thought I would cry, but strangely, no tears came. I just felt empty and hollow. Mom, I was such a fool. Wasn't I? No, Sophia. You loved with a sincere heart. You weren't foolish, you were pure. My mother gently stroked my hair. I need to end this. For real. Yes. Now it's our turn to go on the offensive. When I returned home that night, Daniel was gone. He had probably fled to his parents' house. I sat on the living room sofa and looked out at the city. It was late, and the lights below were like scattered jewels, but my heart felt calm. I was certain that I would never be deceived again. A few days after the confrontation with my in-laws, I was in my mother's study, reviewing additional materials from Jack Miller. Spread across the desk were several photos, personal information related to Emily Park, social media screenshots, and a few pictures from a university yearbook. One small photo caught my eye. It was from a business school reunion, and in the middle, smiling brightly next to Emily, was Rebecca Chang. I stared at the photo for a long time. They had their arms around each other, looking so natural. It was obvious they were close friends. Suddenly, a memory from 6 years ago surfaced. When I first started my company, I was struggling with financial management. A college senior introduced me to Rebecca. Sophia, Financial management is critical for a startup. I can help you, she had said, sounding so proactive and professional from our very first meeting. She was working at a major accounting firm at the time, and I found it strange that she was so interested in my tiny venture. Rebecca, thank you so much, but I can't afford to pay you much right now. It's okay. I've always been interested in startups. Let's grow this together. Her smile seemed so genuine back then. She was in her early 40s, with a calm and trustworthy demeanor. From that day on, Rebecca became my company's CFO. We handled everything together, from accounting and cash flow management to securing investments. She was particularly brilliant at organizing our complex financial structure as the company grew. Sophia, this quarter's revenue looks fantastic. At this rate, we could be looking at a partnership with a major corporation next year. In every quarterly meeting, Rebecca presented precise analysis along with a hopeful outlook. She was a steadfast colleague who gave me strength whenever I felt exhausted. For 6 years, I shared every piece of financial information with her. From sales figures and investor details to future business plans, there was nothing Rebecca didn't know. I couldn't have come this far without you, Rebecca. I had told her sincerely at our company's 5th anniversary party last year. I'm the one who should be grateful, Sophia, for the chance to grow with you. The smile she gave me then also seemed real. But now, I knew it had all been a lie. I started pulling out company files from the study's bookshelf, accounting ledgers from the past few years, investment contracts, acquisition negotiation documents. As I reviewed them one by one, the dots began to connect. During the acquisition negotiations, the other party had known internal information that was impossible for them to have. I thought it was strange, I muttered to myself. Just then, my mother walked into the study. Sophia, what are you looking at? Mom, I think Rebecca leaked all the company information. I showed her the reunion photo. Look at this. Emily and Rebecca were college classmates. My mother put on her glasses and examined the photo. They do look very close. So this was all planned from the beginning. For 6 years. She deceived me for 6 years. At that moment, my chest felt heavy. Daniel's betrayal was a shock, but Rebecca's cut even deeper. The late-night conversations we shared while working, the moments she helped me brainstorm when the company was struggling, the joy we shared in our successes, the realization that all of it was a lie was unbearable. Sophia, don't be too heartbroken. There are people like this in the world, my mother said, patting my shoulder. Mom, I feel so stupid. I didn't know anything for 6 years. No, you trusted with all your heart. There's nothing wrong with that. I looked out the window. A maple tree in the garden was swaying in the autumn wind, its red leaves falling one by one. It felt like a reflection of my own situation. The things I had believed in were falling away, one by one. But a tree survives even after losing all its leaves. It strengthens its roots and sprouts new buds again. I had to start over, too. As a stronger person who would never again trust so easily, Mom, it's really time to end this. Yes, Sophia, it's time for us to play our final card. My mother's voice was filled with a steely resolve. From that day on, I began to plan the final stage not for revenge, but for justice. The divorce proceedings began a month later. The courtroom at the Southern District of New York Courthouse was smaller and more subdued than I had imagined. Under a high ceiling, the judge's bench and witness stand, both made of dark wood, were neatly arranged. The afternoon autumn sun streamed through tall windows, casting a soft glow on the room. I sat at the plaintiff's table, with Catherine Davis, the lawyer my mother recommended, beside me. In her late 40s, Miss Davis was a veteran who had worked in family law for over 20 years. Daniel sat at the defendant's table. It was the first time I had seen him in 3 months, and he looked thinner. A young male lawyer in his 30s sat next to him. All rise, the bailiff announced, and a female judge in her 50s walked to the bench. She wore a simple black robe and had a calm yet sharp demeanor. The first hearing was mostly procedural, a review of the petitions and responses filed by both sides. Daniel's side portrayed me as a greedy woman, claiming I was trying to blame my husband for my own business failures. The defendant is attempting to shift the economic losses from the plaintiff's reckless business expansion onto him by exploiting their marital relationship. Daniel's lawyer argued loudly. Our side, however, responded calmly. Your Honor, the plaintiff is a victim of the defendant's calculated marriage fraud. We will submit clear evidence to support this claim, Miss Davis stated, her voice steady. As the trial progressed, something unexpected happened. The media started covering the case. Initially, the coverage was favorable to Daniel. I don't know how they leaked the information, but articles painting me as a ruthless businesswoman flooded the internet. Female cosmetics CEO files for divorce. After cashing out, demands asset division. The selfish choice of a successful businesswoman. Ditching husband for money. The online comments were brutal. Women these days are scary. They make money and leave their husbands. Businesswomen are always so cold-hearted. Reading those articles with my mother, my heart grew heavy. Mom, they're twisting everything. Sophia, don't worry. The truth will eventually come out. At the second hearing, the tide began to turn. Miss Davis dropped the first bombshell. The audio recording of Daniel and Emily. Your Honor, this is a recording of a conversation between the defendant and a third party. The voices quietly filled the courtroom. So Sophia really has $5 million in debt. Yeah, you heard it from Rebecca. Daniel's face instantly went pale. He leaned over and whispered frantically to his lawyer. Furthermore, Your Honor, we have confirmed the defendant's prior marital history, Miss Davis continued, submitting a second set of documents. The defendant has been married and divorced twice in the last 10 years, acquiring significant assets in each instance. This time, a murmur rippled through the spectators in the gallery. The third bombshell was even more shocking. Your Honor, we have also secured evidence that the plaintiff's company CFO, Rebecca Cheng, is a college classmate of the third party, Emily Park, and that Miss Cheng leaked confidential company information. Miss Davis submitted the reunion photo along with financial records. A total of $30,000 was transferred from Miss Park's account to Miss Cheng's over the last 6 months. Daniel was now speaking urgently to his lawyer, but the lawyer looked just as stunned. The judge reviewed the documents carefully before speaking. Does the defense have any rebuttal to this? Your Honor, Daniel's lawyer began, but he couldn't form a coherent counter-argument. That's when Miss Davis played her final card. Your Honor, we have one more piece of evidence to submit. She handed a USB drive to the clerk. This is a recording of a conversation that took place at the defendant's parents' home. The voices of my in-laws echoed through the courtroom. Why are you still clinging to a woman $5 million in debt? Have her ask her mother for a loan before you divorce her. You need to divorce her. Gasps could be heard from the gallery. A few people shook their heads in disbelief. Daniel sat with his head bowed, his shoulders trembling slightly. After the hearing, reporters swarmed us outside the courthouse. Miss Kim, what are your thoughts on today's proceedings? I am relieved that the truth is coming to light. I have no further comment. I gave a brief answer and left with my mother. The following week, the media's narrative completely changed. Marriage fraud scheme exposed. 2 additional victims identified. Calculated seduction to steal assets. Insider complicity revealed. The online comments did a complete 180. Wow, this was a completely planned crime. That man is a monster. So Sophia Kim was the victim. I judged her too quickly. At the third and final hearing, the judge delivered her verdict. The defendant's actions constitute marriage fraud and have inflicted significant emotional distress upon the plaintiff. Therefore, this court grants an annulment of the marriage and orders the defendant to pay the plaintiff $300,000 in damages. When the verdict was read, Daniel left the courtroom without a word. His retreating figure looked pathetic. Watching him, I felt a mix of emotions. It wasn't triumph, but a kind of emptiness. As we were leaving the courthouse, Miss Davis spoke to me. Sophia, you went through a lot. A case like this is rare. Thank you, Miss Davis. But Sophia, this isn't over yet. What do you mean? Daniel's side will likely appeal. And you'll need to prepare separate lawsuits against Emily Park and Rebecca Cheng. My mother squeezed my hand. Sophia, it seems we still have a long road ahead. Yes, Mom, but I'm not afraid anymore. I walked down the courthouse steps and looked up at the sky. The sun was breaking through the clouds. It had taken time, but the truth had finally been revealed. All that was left was the final cleanup. A week after the trial ended, I received an unexpected call. It was from Emily Park. "Sophia, it's me, Emily." Her voice on the other end of the line was trembling. The 32-year-old woman sounded nothing like the confident person from the audio recordings. "I need to talk to you. Can we meet?" I hesitated for a moment. This was something I needed to discuss with my mother. "I can't come alone, but I can meet you with my lawyer." "Yes, okay." We met 2 days later at a quiet cafe near Union Square. I went with Catherine Davis, but Emily came alone. In person, she was completely different from what I had imagined. She wore no makeup and was dressed in a simple black hoodie, looking worn and frail. "Sophia, I am so sorry." Her first words were an apology. Her head was bowed, and her remorse felt genuine. At first, I just thought I was helping a friend. "A friend? You mean Rebecca?" Emily cautiously continued her story. "She was my closest friend in college. When she introduced me to Daniel, I just thought we were dating." The cafe was quiet, with few customers on a weekday afternoon. Outside the window, the cold November wind scattered the last of the autumn leaves. But later, I found out Daniel was married, and that Rebecca was leaking company information to him. "When did you find this out?" Miss Davis asked. "About a month ago. Daniel started talking about divorce and explained the whole plan in detail." Emily took a small USB drive from her bag. "Sophia, please take this." "What is it?" "It has everything on it. All the things Daniel has done in the past. It includes contact information for the other victims." Miss Davis took the USB drive and looked at it. "Why are you giving this to us?" "Because what I did was wrong. Once I found out there were other victims, I couldn't just stay silent." Emily's eyes were red. "In a way, I'm a victim too. Daniel lied to me. But a wrong is still a wrong." I looked at her quietly. She was a person I should hate, but strangely, I felt no hatred. "Miss Park, are you planning to turn yourself in to the police?" "Yes, I've spoken to my lawyer, and that's what I intend to do." Miss Davis nodded. "That would be wise. Your cooperation will likely lead to a reduced sentence." After leaving the cafe, I reported the situation to my mother. We reviewed the contents of the USB drive together in her study. It was truly shocking. It contained a list of women Daniel had targeted over the past 10 years. The first victim was a woman named Lisa Evans. She was 28 and ran a small pizzeria in Queens. After a 2-year marriage, she was divorced and lost $500,000. The second victim was Maria Rodriguez. She was 32 and owned a language school in a New Jersey suburb. After 3 years of marriage, she lost $800,000. And I was the third. "Mom, should we contact them?" "We have to. If we file a joint complaint, he'll face a much stronger penalty." Through Miss Davis, we were able to get in touch with both women. A week later, the 3 of us met. Lisa was now 40 and raising 2 children on her own. She told us she had lost her pizzeria and was left with a mountain of debt after her marriage to Daniel. Maria was 38 and was now working as an English teacher at a small firm after losing her school. "Sophia, because of you, the truth is finally out," Lisa said, taking my hand. "We were all alone, so we couldn't do anything. Now, at least we can get justice," Maria added, her eyes welling up with tears. The 3 of us filed a joint criminal complaint, accusing Daniel of being a serial marriage fraud predator. A month later, the initial verdict came down. Daniel was sentenced to 4 years in prison. Emily received a sentence of 1 year and 6 months, suspended for 3 years. We filed a separate civil suit against Rebecca Chang for breach of fiduciary duty. She was immediately fired from her new job and faced a massive lawsuit for damages. "Sophia, I'm so sorry." When Rebecca last contacted me, her voice was drained of all life. "We worked together for 6 years. How could you?" I replied coldly. "Rebecca, there's nothing more to say." After all the legal procedures were finished, I took a walk with my mother in Central Park. The cold December wind stung my cheeks, but my heart felt warm. "Mom, it's really over, isn't it?" "Yes. Now you can start fresh." The lake was calm under the winter sun. The events of the past year flashed through my mind like a panorama. Emily had kept her promise, confessing everything and testifying truthfully in court. Her testimony helped secure a heavier sentence for Daniel. "Sophia, thank you so much for forgiving me," Emily had said to me after the final trial, but I shook my head. "Emily, I haven't forgiven you." "What?" "The law will punish you. I believe that's what's right." Emily's face fell. "I appreciate your cooperation, but you still have to pay for what you did," I said it firmly. My mother placed a hand on my shoulder. "I believe that is true justice." Emily simply nodded, her head bowed. As we were leaving the courthouse, my mother said, "Sophia, you made the right choice. Justice is separate from feelings, I guess, Mom." "Yes, that's part of becoming an adult." Now, everything was truly over. It had been a long battle, lasting over a year, but in the end, truth had prevailed. However, I still didn't know how this whole experience would change me. One thing was for sure: the naive Sophia Kim no longer existed. It was time for a new Sophia to begin again. 3 months after all legal proceedings were concluded, I received an unexpected offer. A major news network reached out for an interview for a primetime special. They were preparing a program on preventing marriage fraud. "Miss Kim, we'd be honored if you would appear. Your story could help so many people," the producer urged. After discussing it with my mother, I agreed. There was no reason to hide anymore, and if my experience could help others, I felt it was the right thing to do. The television studio was smaller than I expected. 2 chairs faced each other under warm lighting. A female host in her mid-40s greeted me warmly. "Sophia, thank you for being here today. I know many people are eager to hear your story. I hope it can be helpful." The interview lasted about 30 minutes. I calmly explained what I had been through. I was nervous at first, but it gradually became more natural. "So, what are your plans for the future?" the host asked as her final question. I took a breath and answered, "I'm planning to establish the Magnolia Foundation." "The Magnolia Foundation?" "Yes. It will be a foundation to provide legal support for women who have suffered the same kind of harm I did. I especially want to help female entrepreneurs who fall victim to financial fraud, so they don't have to fight alone." The response after the broadcast was overwhelming. Inquiries about the Magnolia Foundation poured in. "Sophia, I went through something similar. Please help me. I want to donate to the foundation as soon as it's established." In just 1 week, I received over 100 calls. Lisa and Maria also offered to join the foundation's efforts. "Sophia, you helped us find justice. Now it's our turn to help others," Lisa said with a bright smile. "We have to make sure our experiences weren't in vain," Maria agreed. While preparing to launch the foundation, I had many conversations with my mother. We would sit in her garden, drinking tea and talking. "Mom, I feel like I grew up so late." "No, Sophia. You grow up when the time is right." Despite the cold December air, the camellias in her garden were in full bloom, their red blossoms a beautiful contrast against the green leaves. "Mom, there's something I've been curious about." "What is it? How did you see through Daniel so quickly?" My mother slowly set down her teacup. "The truth is," she began, hesitating for a moment before speaking softly, "I went through something similar when I was young." "What?" "It was before I met your father. The man I was with back then, he was a con artist, just like Daniel. It was a story I had never heard. Luckily, I figured it out before we got married, but it left a deep scar. That's how I learned to read people." "So, that's why you were suspicious of Daniel." "Yes, you have to be wary of people who seem too perfect. A truly good person always has a few flaws." Her words resonated deeply with me. In early 2024, I officially launched the Magnolia Foundation. We set up a small office in Manhattan and brought on 3 lawyers and 2 counselors. Our first client was a female entrepreneur in her 30s who had been scammed by her boyfriend after loaning him business funds. "Sophia, thank you so much. If I had been alone, I would have given up," she said with tears in her eyes after her consultation. 6 months after the foundation was established, I appeared on television again. This time, it was to report on the Magnolia Foundation's achievements. To date, we have conducted over 100 consultations and have achieved legal victories in 30 of those cases. What are your goals for the future? We want to expand beyond just post-incident support and focus on preventative education. We're currently developing programs specifically for young female entrepreneurs. After the broadcast, many comments appeared on social media. Sophia Kim, you are an inspiration. I feel encouraged to start over too. I support the Magnolia Foundation. How can I donate? Among them, one comment stood out. Anyone can fall down, but I think only the courageous can get back up. It was so true. One Saturday morning, I went for a walk with my mother on a trail near her home. The eastern sky was slowly beginning to brighten. Sophia, are you happy? Yes, Mom, I really am. That's all that matters. The Hudson River was visible in the distance, a morning mist rising from its surface. The first commuters of the day were starting to appear. Mom, I think I can live well on my own now. Of course you can. You were always a strong child. In that moment, I realized, true love isn't about depending on someone, but about being two independent people who can still be together. And most importantly, it's about loving yourself first. The dawn air was cold, but refreshing. A new day was beginning. I was no longer afraid.